My name is Chris, and today we're going to see if the record pie can really flatten your records. Welcome to the Vinyl Attack. This video is sponsored by Dearborn Music. As a small business owner myself, I strive to spend my money at independent stores, especially when it comes to my record collecting. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you've probably heard me mention Dearborn Music in the past. They have been my favorite large record store for a very long time, and for good reason. I'm able to find every new release I'm looking for in stock, and there's always a massive influx of used records coming through the door every single week, seemingly by the truckload. They have every genre you could possibly want, including many of the hard-to-find releases that sell out everywhere else. If you're in Michigan, I would say that Dearborn Music is worth the drive from anywhere in the state. If you are not from Michigan, I would say that Dearborn Music is worth the drive from anywhere outside the state. But if you're simply too far to come for an in-person visit and still want to support an independent record store, what can be done? How about free shipping on every order over $50 and until April 2nd of this year, that's 2023 for you future viewers, you can enjoy a 15% discount when using the code VinylAttack. That's right. Simply visit dearbornmusic.net and enter the code VinylAttack to get 15% off of your order. What could be easier? Please note, though, that this offer cannot be combined with any other sales going on at the time, so don't be a mooch and try to game the system, okay? If you don't have a local record store, as perhaps you live too far from one, or the one near you just kinda sucks, do yourself a favor and try out Dearborn Music. Whether in person or online, you'll find that working with people who know the industry inside and out will be a much bigger help in your record collecting journey than scrolling mindlessly through some boring online mega retailer who doesn't value your business in near the same way. So help keep local record stores alive and well, and visit Dearborn Music in person or online at dearbornmusic.net and get 15% off your entire order until April 2nd with free shipping over $50. If you're like me, and I know I am, warped, dished, and simply out-of-shape records are an increasing problem for you. You go to the record store and drop upwards of $30 for a single record, only to get home and find out that it is borderline unplayable or, even worse, not playable at all. This, more than just about anything else with modern pressings, has been the bane of my existence over the last several years. What's more is that on several different occasions I picked either the last copy available or a limited edition pressing, only to get home and find out that the aforementioned problems were staring me right in the face. Not only can I not get a replacement for these albums, my only recourse is to go back to the store and request a refund. Now I've wasted time, gas, and money, and I'm left without the album that I came for in the first place. Record Pie aims to change all of that. If you're new to the prospect of flattening records, the idea is quite simple. You take two completely flat surfaces, place a record between them, add a weight on top, and then heat until they are flat. This, of course, is just a broad overview, but you'll see soon enough that this is generally the science behind what the record pie does. Using 16 pounds of alloy steel that Record Pie claims is treated to maximize thermal conductivity and evenly distribute heat across the surfaces, you sandwich your record in between said steel and a pair of supplied felt mats they call groove guards to help further reduce any risk of damage. You then add the desired heat by placing the metal apparatus inside what seems to be a glorified, if not well-designed, pizza warming bag that has a built-in heating element. To select your desired temperature, you can use either the included external power unit or your smartphone and even smart devices like Amazon Alexa or Google Home. Many of you might ask, why should I spend money on a product like this when I can just make something myself? But fair question. The problem with homebrewed solutions, in my experience, when it comes to record flattening, is that they are highly situational and far from consistent. Can you find two panes of glass? Sure. But are you comfortable handling two panes of glass and adding weight to them? Does your oven even go low enough to produce a heat that won't damage your records in the first place? I know my oven won't go below 170 degrees. That's far too high a temperature to do what needs to be done without extreme risk. On top of that, heating up an entire oven to try and flatten one record is simply wasteful. Using electricity in a case-specific product is certainly going to be more cost-effective in the long run, and the short run too, I would say. For those of you already scoffing at the idea of paying $275 for a product that you can make yourself, I invite you to do just that. I'm certain you will make your way down to the comments section and tell us how you use two panes of glass in your oven or some type of metal sheet that you can get for next to nothing and you get excellent results. If you have a system that works, that's great. But for the rest of us who want a more practical solution, if not a more consistent one, I present to you this review. Going over the simple printed instructions, you are greeted with a general overview of the components in the system and their function. How to turn it on, how to hook up Wi-Fi, changing temperature displays from Fahrenheit to Celsius, etc. With that out of the way, which is a pretty quick read, you can move on to the fun bit, which is learning how to flatten your records. I mainly use my smartphone and a Wi-Fi connection as I enjoyed how simple it was and the extra information I could get within the app. I could monitor not only what the current temperature was, but also how long it had been in that range, as well as how long I've been baking a record overall. I could also set a high temperature limit so as to not go over a safe temperature that would risk damaging my records. There's even a high temperature alarm to warn you of such an occurrence if you'd like to make use of that. Some things to keep in mind about this product and the potential results are actually included right in the beginning of step 3 in the instructions. Every record and warp are unique, so experimentation is key to flattening success. They go on to mention that what works for one record might not work on another. I certainly found this to be the case, but I was never in fear for any of my records, as I started off with the recommended temperature of 125 degrees, and I only went up if I found a stubborn record that simply wouldn't flatten. RecordPie also clearly states that the goal was to achieve a mostly flat playable record. Let me say that again, a mostly flat playable record. Perfection is rarely possible and should not be the goal. I agree with this wholeheartedly. While we would all love to have our records perfectly flat, it's just not always going to be a viable option. Quite frankly, I think that's just fine. My hope in all this was to be able to take an ever-growing number of warped records in my collection and simply make them playable again. Moving on to the actual techniques I used, I must say that I don't know that I found much difference between the 33 standard warped and 33 dish warp groove guards that were included. It would stand to reason, though, that the dish warp guards would let in more heat as their increased opening size in the center. I also feel that said opening would allow for a potentially flatter record, as there's a space for the label area, which almost is the tallest part of the record. I used these guards with the tougher records I tried to fix, as you'll soon see. From there, making sure the record was clean, I simply placed a record on the bottom groove guard, added the top groove guard, and placed the top steel plate over the whole thing. You then take a cylindrical wing nut and gently tighten it down. There is no need for force here, as the weight of the top plate does all the heavy lifting for you, or pressing as the case may be. Next on the agenda was selecting a temperature. RecordPie recommends starting off at 125 degrees, and I found that to be a good mark for most of what I was doing. The entire unit takes about a half an hour to 45 minutes to come up to temperature, and they recommend starting off with a 2-hour bake time. Once this is complete, you'll want to let the record sit inside the RecordPie to cool down for at least 45 minutes before removing it. Of course, this brings us to the fun part, finding out if your record is truly flat at this point. If it is, congratulations, job done, you're on your way. If it's not, you'll want to try the additional options further down in the instructions. Generally speaking, RecordPie recommend adding an additional 30 minutes of bake time if your record was completely unchanged at all. Keep doing this until you do see a change. If that doesn't happen after 8 to 10 hours of bake time, I would go so far as to say as little as 4, you'll want to consider increasing the temperature. I found that 125 degrees was good for most records that were either black or less than 180 grams. For colored or specialty vinyl, especially those that come in at 180 grams themselves, you'll likely want to start out at 135 degrees. Again, however, your results may vary depending upon your record, your climate, and any number of random mitigating factors. So what kind of results did I get? Starting off with a 140-gram colored vinyl pressing of The Return of Godzilla, I set the temperature of the RecordPie to 125 degrees and used a bake time of 2.5 hours. Right out of the gate, I was met with positive results, as the clearly warped album shown in the before video was flattened to the point where playing it was no longer an issue. I almost felt a little guilty, as this album was a mail order piece that I was fortunate enough to have replaced by the manufacturer. Now I have 2 perfectly good albums. With such a strong start, I may have tried to shoot the moon just a little too quickly with my next foray into flattening. Breaking out my incredibly problematic Stranger Things score, both volumes 1 and 2, I set out to see if the RecordPie could work as perceived magic on the 180-gram blue glitter Starfield vinyl. For whatever reason, and my guess of course is the custom vinyl used to make the records, all 4 of the Stranger Things albums had some type of warp or another. This is the sort of shit that needs to stop with proper quality control, but I digress. The good news here was that 135 degrees and about 2.5 hours of bake time were enough to make 3 of the 4 records about as flat as I could want. The bad news, as you can probably guess, is that the 4th LP was the bane of my existence. Believe me when I tell you that I went to the extremes with this record, and it was certainly a war of attrition toward the end. Clearly, as seen in the before video, this warp doesn't look as bad as some of the others up to this point, but don't be fooled. The 4th LP in this set was sent directly from hell to my local record store, and I unwittingly brought it home. I started with a 2.5-hour bake time at 135 degrees and didn't get much in return, so I ran it for 3 hours. Same result. At about 4.5 hours, the record came out about as flat as it was going to get. I just didn't know it yet. I upped the temperature to 140 degrees and baked for 4 hours. No change. So then I tried for 6 hours at the same temp. Same result. Starting to get irritated with this impossibly warped record, I went against all recommendations of record safety and I cranked the record pie to 150 degrees and I set about baking. I started with 3 hours, but that didn't get me anywhere, so I jumped directly to 5, but still didn't see a result. At this point, I may have lost my mind. Being able to make use of the mobile app, I started to bake the record before I left for work one day and finally shut it off remotely some 13 hours later. It was a long day. What did that get me? Well, you can probably already guess. There was no additional change from the first positive result I achieved. On the whole, however, I must say that I wasn't overly disappointed with the record pie itself. After all, it had flattened 4 other records previously to a satisfactory result. This one particular LP just happened to be the wall against which I would bang my head. In the end, though, I'm actually glad I encountered it. It makes for a more thorough review with real-world expectations. Not to mention, even though the 4th record still has a warble to it, it is indeed now playable. All of this, though, was merely a lead-up to the album I truly wanted to fix in my collection. A few years ago, Rhino Records released all of the major label offerings from Pantera. They were cut from the original masters and put on 180-gram Rhino vinyl, whatever that means. These are not the gimmicky colored versions that came out more recently. No, these are quality pressings on black vinyl and they sound fantastic. I managed to find the entire collection at my local record store, save for one, Reinventing the Steel. Looking high and low locally, and then scouring the internet for a reasonable deal, I finally found what I was looking for on eBay at a fair price, about $40 if memory serves correctly. So I placed my order and waited patiently for the record to arrive. While I'm certain you can already see where this is going, when I opened the gatefold jacket to remove the coveted record to complete my collection, I found out that it was warped. To say that it was playable is akin to saying that cat food is edible. Sure, it's possible, but it's not a very good idea. So with the record pie in my possession and a few test records under my belt, I decided to see if I could fix my Pantera record. With the prior experience of using 135 degrees on 180-gram records a success, I tried this with my Pantera record for about 2.5 hours. As you can see clearly in these videos, the difference between the before and after is nothing short of profound. My coveted copy of Reinventing the Steel had been saved. My Rhino Records Pantera collection was complete. So, with the obvious success I experienced with the record pie, did I find any caveats with the unit? Just a couple of minor things, I would say. The amount of wires that go in and out of this unit are a little unsightly, but they clearly serve a purpose. You have wires running from the wall to the heating element, from the heating element to the unit, and even another wire connected from the unit to a thermometer that goes inside. It's easy enough to bundle them neatly with a Velcro strap, but it's still a lot of damn wires to look at. The good news, though, is that none of them are too short. Something that bothered me more than the wires, however, even if that may be trivial, was the asymmetrical wing nut used to secure the top plate. This just did not sit well with me in the least. Every time I tried to tighten the nut, no matter how gently, I struggled with getting it threaded because of its asymmetrical design. It also didn't want to spin smoothly for me because of its off-center weight. Does this affect any of the unit's performance? No, of course not. But it just stuck in my craw, and if I can find a symmetrical wing nut to replace this, I certainly will. The only other thing that I noticed that required any additional attention was the bolt that ran through the center of the unit itself. It may be because of repeated use, or it may be because I accidentally over-tightened the wing nut once, but after a few records had been flattened, I found the need to reach underneath the unit to hold the bolt in place while tightening the top wing nut. Again, this has zero impact on the performance of the record pie, but I thought I should make you aware all the same. You may be wondering how the record pie compares to other products of this nature, particularly the vinyl flat. Unfortunately, I don't have any first-hand experience with the vinyl flat, so I can't say for sure. That said, from all the images and reviews I've seen over the past several years for the vinyl flat, I feel it's safe to say that the record pie is indeed a superior product. Is that a fair assessment? Perhaps not, but I would certainly say that this is more than just an educated guess, and here's why. Looking at the details of the vinyl flat, the main advantage I would give the record pie is its heating bag. The record pie bag has a good deal of padding and zips closed, save for a half an inch to let the cables escape, to keep the heat where it belongs, inside the bag. The vinyl flat's bag, on the other hand, looks to be quite thin and would therefore be much less efficient at retaining heat. Is that to say that you shouldn't buy a vinyl flat, or if you have one that you should upgrade to the Record Pi? Not necessarily, but I do feel that the moderate price difference between the two gives the clear advantage to the Record Pi. The Smart app alone makes the Record Pi much more appetizing to me. See what I did there? Pi? Appetizing? That brings us to my rating and overall thoughts for the Record Pi. After putting the unit through its paces over the course of flattening several records, I give the Record Pi Record Flattener the gold seal. For $275, the current sale price when buying direct, the Record Pi will do exactly what it claims. It will take your warped, warbled, and generally disfigured albums and flatten them into something that you can not only play, but enjoy again. Is this the right product for you? Clearly only you can answer that. But if you have a large record collection, or even a growing one, I would say that this is a sound investment that, in the end, will save you time, money, and frustration. I liked it well enough that I'm keeping this unit. They can send me a bill via PayPal or Venmo or carrier pigeon for all I care, but this unit is staying right here with me. I've already come across records in my collection that I didn't even realize were warped and fixed them immediately. Knowing that moving forward, I can get my records, new or used, flattened to their intended shape gives me a feeling of confidence in buying that I didn't know I was doing without. Thanks to all of my patrons on Patreon who help make these videos possible. Thanks to you for stopping by to watch, and I look forward to next time.